Hi, this is Catherine, and this is Taking Tea with Catherine. Welcome back, or welcome. This is jasmine green tea, again, because I like it. And my idea is, some things in life you should have in moderation, but in other things, you can't have too much of a good thing. And I really like jasmine green tea, so why not have more of it? Ties in a little bit to this week and the Friday reads, because pretty much all my reading, this past week and my weeding. Yeah, I don't garden. My reading this weekend even and coming up for next week is all about nature writing. Mostly nonfiction, because that's what the theme is, the Springathon reading challenge. And it's mostly about reading nature writing of a nonfiction type, but fiction can factor in as well, and so I have no problem throwing in as much of the fiction that I have that is related to nature at all in any way. It's a labor of love for me. But because the Springathon, which I've mentioned before, I think it goes from the 4th to the 17th, but before the 4th, I already finished the book. I had started at the very end of April, and then I finished at the very beginning of May. That could fit into this category. It's a memoir, and it's called The Electricity of Every Living Thing by Catherine May. I kind of like this cover, except for the fact that it's a little bit peeling in the back. Come on. This is not a used book. But, so I've read this to you guys before, but it's in the beginning it says, in August 2015, Catherine May set out to walk the 630-mile southwest coast path. She wanted to understand why she had stopped coping with everyday life. I'm not going to keep going because I've already read the book. So when I read that brief synopsis, my thought was it was going to be like the whole path in England, which I think encompasses Devon and some of Cornwall. I thought she was literally going to start and keep going in the path, and that was going to be the whole story. And it just goes to show that you can never tell when reading something, a description, that it's not quite that. So basically, Catherine, that's my name too, is doing it in increments. She lives a bit further away on the other side of England, it seems, with her husband and young son. And her husband seems to be quite long-suffering because she will basically take up almost every weekend in these walks. Most of the weekends will be walking on this path that is apparently a famous path that I'd never heard of until now, and now I'm hearing it all over the place. There's other books that talk about that too. So that's why I say nature related, because it's a kind of a hiking path, and it can be a little bit rough at times, and she kind of learns about how to get along with different parts of nature, not that she never did before. But really, it is kind of a project that she takes on herself, and when she can't do that path, she'll also walk in different parts of England, mostly around Kent, which is where she lives. At one point, I think she does a pilgrimage walk, the walk from London to Canterbury, which a lot of the pilgrims did, which I talked about a couple weeks ago, actually, when I was talking about Thomas Becket, when I was talking about Thomas Cromwell. So everything's related. And she does get into a little bit about her issues at first. Why does she have trouble dealing with certain things in life? She loved her son very much, but she never felt like a normal kind of mother. Her husband put up with a lot, but there were things that he didn't really admit to her until she brought it up. And just her relationships growing up, and even now, she had some friends that she was quite close to, and she was really good with one-on-one relationships, which sounds so relatable to me. But in the middle of this walking project that she did, she heard this conversation on the radio that was talking about Asperger's or autism and describing things, and she starts to come to realize that the things that she had to handle in life and that she was having trouble with may come down to that. Maybe she has this. So a lot of the story is the walk itself and the surroundings and the stories around that, and sometimes little bits of history too, and explanations about enjoying details or whatever. And I totally enjoyed that. And part of it is the whole self-discovery of getting the diagnosis and what goes into that, and also just bringing up her theory of maybe she is autistic, but and seeing what people say. And some people would be like, well, I don't think so, but then she would explain something and say, yeah, you know, you always were this way and that way. So that's the story, and I think it can be enjoyed by not just people who are autistic or think they might be, self-diagnosed, etc., but I think it can also be just a good story for anyone who likes to read memoirs, who likes to read paths of self-discovery, literal and figurative. So I would recommend this book. It wasn't like a knock your socks off amazing memoir, but it was a really good one. And it's up my alley. So that is one book I finished. The other book I finished, and I mean, I read it in a day. I don't always do that. I'm not a super fast reader, and I almost think that I could have taken my time with it because it's a book that takes place in the South, American South. And I always feel like, as a American North person, Northeast United States person, especially a New Yorker, I always lived a life of speed. You know, everything's about, you gotta get this done, New York minute, blah, blah, blah. I even talk way too fast. And when I've had conversations with people in the South, especially people who are presently living in the South, not necessarily people who grew up in the South and have lived in New York for a while, I almost get frustrated because I'm like, how do you talk so slow? And I don't mean like slow like something wrong slow. I mean that's just the pace. Just everything is slow, and I feel like in my own life I could do with a little bit of improvement in that way. Slow down. So both of these books really taught me that, except this book wasn't really about that. It's just anytime I read anything that takes place in the American South at all, it just comes into my head that I should work on that, if that makes any sense. I know there are people who are from the South that are also fast-paced and rushed. It's a generalization, but anyway, long-winded way of saying I finished Where the Crawdads Sing. So I don't know if I'm going to talk about that too much today because technically it's a murder mystery in that. So when I read a murder mystery, I usually shelf it in description because I want to save it for my TM mystery. And I plan to do a TM mystery this month, but probably later on the month. But I will say it surprised me that I liked it as much as I did. I didn't give it a 5-star because there were certain things that were slightly disjointed to me that I was like, just didn't make sense to me, and I'll talk about that again in the future. But it was enjoyable. The prose, I guess, the writing, and well, the poetry too. There's poetry all over the book, but not, in my opinion, not too much, because I have read novels that throw poetry in that gets a little bit obnoxious, but this was good, and it actually had something to do with the plot, so it was actually fitting. But it's about, and I also, going into it, it starts, for years, rumors of the Marsh Girl have haunted Barkley Cove, a quiet town on the North Carolina coast. So in late 1969, when handsome Chase Andrews is found dead, the locals immediately expect Kaya Clark, the so-called Marsh Girl, whose actual name is Catherine as well. So we got Catherines all over here. So when I was reading this, for some reason, I thought that she was, because I heard someone else explain it, and they made it out that she was supposed to be some kind of like really wild child, like I thought she wouldn't even be able to speak, for goodness sakes, or forgot how to speak. I don't know. You know, when you hear people describe things and you're like, well, and then later on you read it and you go, that's not at all what it's about. So I don't even remember where I heard that from. Somebody's YouTube or something. I don't know. But it ends up being, which I knew this because I knew that the writer was someone who was into nature, and their career was more along that. This was like her first novel, so it's very beautifully written about Kaya's relationship to wild things, birds, shells, the ocean, other parts of water. Not a lot about crawdads, to be honest, but yeah, the marsh itself. And it, when I read things like this, I don't necessarily want her life because it's a kind of sad. Very interesting themes of isolation and how it affects somebody. Interesting time to read that right now. But it makes me realize how removed I am from nature as well. Because growing up in a place where we could barely keep plants alive, I had a grandmother who was good at doing that, but that was a fluke. I mean, just, I mean, yeah. Living in a city where, yeah, you have some plants that are struggling to survive, no outside land of one's own at all, don't know anything about how to survive in that situation. I've never been camping. I don't want to, actually. Which is funny because just going back to this book, there is a little bit about camping, which is not very agreeable to her either. And, you know, she's got, you know, like roughing it, but not roughing it. I think I can kind of get on board with that. I do have certain embarrassing digestive issues that make it not easy for me to go out and do things like camping. If I did anything, it would have to be that horrible word glamping. So yeah, enough said about that. So it is, but when I say that, that makes me like reading books like this even more, because I can read books about people that are totally relatable to me and like it, but sometimes you want to read about someone who is quite different and just how her situation affected her. And it's fiction, and it was a page turner, it was beautifully written, and so I totally recommend it. And I'm just surprised I read it so fast. Currently reading, I'm reading pretty quickly, not as quickly as these other books. I started this on Tuesday and it's Friday, and I'm up to page 101. And it's let's see. You guys need to know this, right? You can't wait to know this, right? It's over like 280, about 280. Lab Girl, I hope Jarin. I've been looking forward to reading this. I've heard nothing but great things about it. It started out a little bit slow for me. Her childhood, and it's a memoir about a scientist whose main deal is working with plants and soil and stuff like that. But she does a lot more than that. So when they're, you know, a lot of the beginning bits weren't what I expected. They weren't bad, but it was just kind of like, all right, I'm not getting to the part that I'm really into yet. But once I did, I'm starting to, which is basically now, the past day, really, I've started getting into the good part of it. And I'm really liking it. Her actual life, I think there's going to be a little bit about scientific discovery that I haven't even gotten into, but her actual life story is interspersed with stories about trees and how they grow and survive from seed to onward. And I love that. I started and I want to go back to is it called The Secret or Hidden Life of Trees? I think it's The Hidden Life of Trees, but I could be wrong. I had it at the library. I want to buy it, but I'm buying too many books right now, so. But it's one I want to get back to. I love reading about trees. I'm not an expert on it, but I just love it. So when she gets into that, I'm pretty enthused. And I am also liking her life story now, too. So I'm going to keep going in this. I expect, I could be wrong, I expect to finish it this weekend, so we'll see. Now, because I'm in this Springathon, I am doing until the 17th in my own decision, because not everyone has to do this. My own decision was to read nothing but nature writing, whether it's in fiction or nonfiction, until the end. And I could keep going afterwards, but that during this time, it's like when I'm in Victober, I kind of just, unless I'm finishing a book from the month before, I read nothing but Victorian books. Nonfiction November, I read nothing but nonfiction, I think. So I do try to, not to be so strict with myself, but I mean, I think a 2-week span is a pretty good time to focus on one thing. But when I do that, I don't, because I had about, five-ish books that I wanted to read for this. When I do that, I don't want to open too many at once, especially because a lot of them are memoirs related to nature writing of some sort. I'm talking about the nonfiction. So I don't want to read too many at once because I don't want the stories, even if they're slightly different, even if they're not, even if they're different time periods, whatever, slightly different life, whatever, I don't want to get them mixed up. I don't always get things mixed up, but when the theme kind of, sorry, itchy, you like watching me scratch my ear in the middle of the... When the theme is somewhat similar, it can blur a little bit, and let's face it. It's like to me, I love reading mystery novels, you guys know that, but I like to read one at a time because the plots could get mixed up even if one takes place in a mansion and the other one takes place in a jungle. It still might somehow get mixed up. So in that way, I want to keep one nonfiction going until I'm done. But I might throw in a fiction while I'm at it. And my choice for that, and I plan to start it either today or tomorrow, is this lovely The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I always think I'm going to say it wrong. And every time I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I knew that. But the clock's going off again. I just know that I've been overdue for reading this, and I meant to read it in April, but I think it fits in really well with the Springathon, and so, yeah. This is just so pretty. I'm also doing the Instagram thing. Every day there's a prompt, and today was the prettiest cover, and I chose this book just because. I mean, there are other beautiful covers out there, but this is just, it's just so, it's like china. It looks like a nice teacup. Okay. So that's all I'm gonna definitely read from between now and Friday. If I finish both of them before then, I might pick up something else on my Springathon TBR. I have plenty. But until then, I think let's just focus on these. And I got this in the mail. I thought this had expired. Through my job, I got a couple of subscriptions, yes. Really, really cheap. And I don't like to subscribe to too many magazines because, number one, it's a waste of paper, I think now. Because if I don't really read it, then I just go through it, throw it into the recycling, you know. But I do like magazines sometimes. And if I find one that I like the theme of, and for the price, this was really good. But, so this is Flower. I thought this just fits in with this whole theme, Flower. It's not like Victoria Magazine quite, but it has a little bit of that feeling, excuse me, a little bit of life with nature, but a little more about decorating, kind of. It's not quite, you know, I think I might actually enjoy things like cottage living a little more. Because I also have country living, which is almost there, but that's okay, because again, for the price. But look at this, the magic of outdoor living. It's like, rub it in. I'm like, yes, it is magical because I don't believe it exists anymore because I have almost none of it. So, yeah. But look, you could stroll Prince Charles Gardens at Highgrove, so that's kind of nice. A dreamy Nashville home. I've never been to Nashville. You know, speaking of the South, there's a lot about the American South in this magazine too. Which, despite what I seem to be talking about today, I'm not that obsessed with. I just, like anything, sometimes it's nice to read about something that is different than what you're accustomed to. When I'm done with Springathon, which is not this week, it'll be next week, but when I am done, I will probably start getting back to things about New York again. I'm starting to feel, it's not overwhelming me yet, but I'm starting to feel craving to start another history book. Whether a nonfiction and or a historical novel. Which technically the Where the Crawdads Say is a historical novel. Because it takes place in like the 50s and 60s and early 70s. So kind of historic. But you know what I'm talking about the real past. Because when I say the real past, I mean over 100 years ago. Which now we're getting close. But anyway, so that's my reading for now. It's my Friday reads. I think I'm doing okay. I'm not stuck there. I'm not ravenously reading, but I don't need to be, if that makes sense. You know, sometimes I feel like I would rather be reading closer to the pace that I was before this whole quarantine situation. Because I'm fine with that. Last year I read, was it 85 books? And some people think that's a lot and too much, and some people think that's not enough. I thought it was great, and I wouldn't mind just keeping up with that pace. I don't mind if I do more, but I don't mind if I do a little less, but I don't need to go nuts. I just don't want to fall behind necessarily just because there's so much I want to read. Anyway, the fact that there's so much I want to read is good. Am I yammering? I am yammering, but that's okay because it is Friday and this is Friday Reads. And I hope you've enjoyed. If you like, please subscribe if you haven't already. And If you have anything to say about these books, hopefully nice things, please comment down below. Hope you're having a lovely Friday and a lovely weekend. And this is Catherine at Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and book-filled day. Bye.